What if the Saturday mornings of the 1960s were hiding something dangerous? Behind the laughter and colorful animation, some cartoons were quietly censored or completely vanished. Studios trimmed scenes, governments banned episodes, and audiences never knew the truth. These were the shows too bold, too strange, or too political for their time. Let's uncover the 10 banned or butchered 60s cartoons you were never meant to see. Number 10. The Mighty Hercules, 1963. The Mighty Hercules looked harmless to most children, a muscle-bound hero fighting monsters and evil sorcerers with a magic ring. But the truth behind the show was darker. Produced on a small budget in Canada and syndicated worldwide, it pushed ancient mythology into Saturday morning television. Yet, something about it bothered broadcasters. The problem lay in its depiction of violence and pagan imagery. Hercules didn't just defeat his enemies. He hurled them off cliffs, turned them to stone, and crushed them with impossible strength. American censors worried that children would imitate the brutality. Religious groups claimed the show glorified false gods. In the Bible Belt, several local stations refused to air certain episodes. Behind the scenes, chaos brewed too. Voice actors worked under fake names to avoid union disputes. The animation studio cut corners using recycled footage and minimalist backgrounds that gave the show a haunting stillness. Critics mocked it, but young viewers were hypnotized by its eerie tone and chanting soundtrack. By the end of the decade, the Mighty Hercules disappeared from mainstream syndication. Years later, uncut prints resurfaced, revealing how much footage had been trimmed. Today, those full versions exist only in fan archives, passed around like ancient relics. It was a show that tried to bring mythic power to children, but was buried for daring to look too pagan, too violent, and too different. Number 9. Rocket Robin Hood, 1966. Rocket Robin Hood looked like a harmless novelty, an outer space retelling of the classic Robin Hood tales, set in the year 3000 with laser arrows, rocket ships, and cosmic castles. But beneath the bright colors and campy heroics, the series carried themes that quickly drew the attention of censors. Robin and his merry men weren't just adventurers. They openly rebelled against corrupt authorities, raided government outposts, and toppled tyrannical leaders. During the Cold War, several American affiliates argued the show promoted anti-establishment thinking. A few stations even refused to air episodes where villains resembled real dictators. The studio insisted it was coincidence, but the complaints kept coming. The show's bizarre psychedelic visuals caused more trouble. Strange flashing backgrounds and surreal transitions, budget tricks meant to fill time, were accused of copying drug culture imagery. Parent groups demanded cuts, and some religious organizations protested futuristic rituals they considered inappropriate for children. By the late 60s, many episodes had been shortened or heavily re-edited for syndication. Behind the scenes, production was chaotic. Different studios handled animation, creating wildly uneven quality. Scripts were frequently toned down under sponsor pressure. Decades later, uncut reels resurfaced, revealing a sharper, more rebellious series than viewers ever saw. Rocket Robin Hood had dared to question authority and paid for it. Number 8. Jonny Quest, 1964. Jonny Quest wasn't just a cartoon, it was a revolution. Sleek action, heavy and drenched in danger, it was the first animated adventure that felt cinematic. But that realism also got it censored. The show followed young Johnny, his scientist father, Dr. Benton Quest bodyguard Race Bannon, and their friends traveling the globe, solving mysteries and battling criminals. Its exotic settings and lifelike violence shocked television watchdogs. Characters carried real guns. Explosions left visible corpses. Networks had never seen animation this intense. Religious groups protested its depiction of voodoo rituals and foreign mysticism. ABC demanded heavy edits for re-airing, and in some countries, entire episodes were banned for racial caricatures. In Britain, one episode set in India was cut for implying black magic. Behind the scenes, the production nearly bankrupted Hanna-Barbera. Each episode cost more than double a typical cartoon because of its detailed art and jazz orchestration. When sponsors complained about violence, the studio reluctantly toned down future projects, abandoning the serious style that defined Jonny Quest. Decades later, fans restored the original versions from surviving film prints. Watching them today feels like opening a time capsule from a braver era. It was a cartoon that treated danger seriously and paid the price for being too real. Jonny Quest was both a triumph and a casualty of television's fear of growing up. Number 7. Crusader Rabbit, 1960. Crusader Rabbit looked innocent enough. A talking bunny and his tiger sidekick Rags fighting cartoon villains in serialized cliffhangers. But behind that cheerful facade lay a tangled history of censorship, legal battles, and lost episodes. It began as the very first animated series made specifically for television. By the early 1960s, producers tried to revive it with new episodes in color. Yet this resurrection collided with the moral guardians of the decade. Critics accused Crusader Rabbit of mocking patriotism and authority. The title character's crusading zeal was viewed as a parody of religion itself. Sponsors feared backlash and networks demanded rewrites to tone down the satire. The problems didn't stop there. The studio's distribution rights became a legal war zone. Lawsuits erupted over ownership, forcing entire seasons off the air. Many prints were destroyed or re-edited into nonsense compilations. Scenes with political references vanished. In one episode, Crusader Rabbit exposed a corrupt kingdom that mirrored contemporary America too closely for comfort. That episode was pulled within weeks. Animators who worked on the show described the atmosphere as chaotic and paranoid. Staff were told to remove jokes that mentioned war or politics. Yet fans noticed missing transitions and abrupt cuts whenever the Rabbit's crusade hinted at moral hypocrisy. By 1965, most television stations stopped airing it altogether. For decades, the uncut episodes were considered lost. Then collectors unearthed old reels showing that early Crusader Rabbit had been far more subversive than anyone realized. Today, it stands as a hidden pioneer that mixed humor and political commentary long before animation was supposed to do either. What began as a playful adventure became a quiet rebellion, erased by its own success. Number 6. The Alvin Show, 1961. When The Alvin Show debuted, it looked like harmless family fun. 3 chipmunks singing pop songs while their patient human guardian tried to manage the chaos. Yet even Alvin couldn't escape censorship during the clean-cut 1960s. The series dared to blur the line between children's entertainment and cultural satire. Alvin's mischievous personality often poked fun at authority figures and mocked American consumerism. One episode featured a fake commercial that some sponsors thought insulted real advertisers. The backlash was immediate. CBS ordered the sequence removed from future airings. Behind the music, the production struggled. Voice artist Ross Bagdasarian recorded all 3 chipmunks himself by speeding up his own voice. The workload was enormous and the budget thin. Some episodes were shipped overseas for animation, resulting in uneven quality and miscommunications that angered network executives. A few musical numbers faced unexpected bans too. Parody lyrics of popular hits risked copyright lawsuits. Other songs were accused of promoting rebellion among kids. Religious groups condemned one Halloween segment for including cartoon ghosts and occult jokes. When reruns appeared in syndication, several episodes were missing entire minutes. For decades, fans wondered why certain segments never resurfaced on television or VHS. Only in the streaming era did uncut versions appear, revealing the show's bold humor and sly commentary. What seemed like a simple musical cartoon was in truth a reflection of early 60s pop culture anxiety. Alvin may have been small, but his spirit of chaos scared the grown-ups who preferred silence over satire. Number 5. Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse, 1960. Before Batman conquered screens, a parody already existed. Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse was created by Bob Kane himself as a light-hearted spoof of his own comic book hero. But what began as self-parody soon collided with television's growing fear of moral corruption. The show presented a feline superhero armed with bizarre gadgets battling colorful villains across a surreal cityscape. Its tone was campy, yet subversive. Villains included mobsters, obvious parodies of real-life gangsters, and even mad scientists who resembled Cold War spies. Parents groups took offense, claiming the series glamorized violence and hinted at organized crime. Networks panicked. Several episodes were cut or never aired. Censors removed scenes where Courageous Cat fired realistic weapons or interrogated criminals. Others objected to a female villain whose exaggerated personality was deemed inappropriate for children. Behind the scenes, Kane faced backlash from comic book purists who accused him of mocking his own creation. Budget limitations worsened matters. The low frame rate and recycled sound effects gave the show an eerie rhythm that felt unintentionally unsettling. Yet that very style later earned it cult status among underground animation fans. By the late 60s, reruns had been heavily trimmed to remove perceived violent content. Original reels were locked in archives and thought lost. When collectors restored them decades later, fans discovered the uncut episodes contained surprisingly sharp humor about corruption and heroism. Courageous Cat had tried to question the line between hero and vigilante years before mainstream cartoons dared to. It was silenced for doing so too early. Number 4. Clutch Cargo, 1960. Clutch Cargo remains one of the strangest cartoons ever broadcast. Its stiff artwork and human lips superimposed over static faces terrified some viewers but fascinated others. Yet behind its cheap novelty hid something more controversial. Created by Cambria Studios, Clutch Cargo followed a square-jawed adventurer and his young sidekick Spinner as they explored jungles, deserts, and frozen wastes. The show was marketed as educational adventure storytelling, but its crude depiction of non-Western cultures drew complaints from the start. Stereotyped accents and caricatures appeared in almost every episode. By mid-decade, several stations had dropped it entirely. The censorship went deeper than imagery. Episodes referencing atomic experiments and smuggling were quietly edited to remove dialogue about espionage or war. In one case, a scene implying government corruption was deleted from all U.S. prints. Rumors spread that the series had angered advertisers linked to defense industries. Behind-the-scenes production chaos mirrored the show's on-screen absurdity. To save money, Cambria used a bizarre process called synchrovox, where live actor mouths were filmed and pasted onto still drawings. This unsettling hybrid caused children's nightmares and adult mockery. Some religious broadcasters refused to air it at all, claiming it looked demonic. Yet decades later, critics reappraised Clutch Cargo as a surrealist accident of genius. It became a cult favorite precisely because of its eerie tone and censored fragments. The few uncut episodes that survive reveal moments of political commentary, lost in later prints. What was once dismissed as cheap television now feels like a window into a culture, wrestling with censorship, creativity, and fear of the unknown. Number 3. The Beanie and Cecil Show, 1962. The Beanie and Cecil Show was supposed to be simple nautical fun. A boy named Beanie, a sea serpent named Cecil, and a goofy cast of pirates and villains. But beneath the slapstick humor creator Bob Clampett slipped in satire sharp enough to wound. Clampett, known for his subversive Warner Brothers work, filled the show with jokes about television censorship, politics, and consumer culture. Kids laughed. Adults noticed the barbs. One recurring villain, Dishonest John, embodied corruption in both business and government. When a few local networks caught on, they began cutting entire segments. The controversy reached its peak when an episode mocked the television industry itself. Characters broke the fourth wall and accused the network of watering down cartoons. CBS executives were furious. They ordered re-edits and demanded Clampett tone down his scripts. He refused, and the production was quietly shut down after a single season. Some episodes later reappeared in syndication stripped of their edgier jokes. But fans traded uncut prints through underground film clubs, keeping the spirit of rebellion alive. Behind the laughter, Beanie and Cecil was a coded protest against media control disguised as children's entertainment. Animation historians now call it one of the most daring experiments of its era. What looked like nonsense turned out to be a mirror of 60s America anxious about conformity and free speech. Its cancellation marked the beginning of a decade where cartoons were forced to smile even when their creators wanted to scream. Number 2. The Adventures of Tintin, 1961. Before the famous 80s revival, Tintin's first animated incarnation arrived quietly in the early 60s, produced in Europe but distributed globally. What few remember is how brutally it was censored before it reached American screens. Based on Hergé's legendary comics, the show aimed to adapt the books faithfully, yet the world had changed since the 1930s, when Tintin began. Episodes featuring colonial settings or racial stereotypes alarmed broadcasters. Entire story arcs were cut or rewritten. Tintin in the Congo was never produced. The crab with the golden claws lost its desert gunfights. Even the broken ear was edited to remove a plot about arms dealing. Behind the scenes, Hergé was deeply conflicted. He wanted accuracy, but television demanded simplification. When he saw the American cuts, he called them mutilations. Animators complained of interference from sponsors who feared political backlash. The show's international team, Belgians, French Canadians, and Americans, argued over tone until production stalled. In some countries, especially France, the uncut episodes aired briefly, revealing how mature the original storytelling was. Audiences were shocked by violence, moral ambiguity, and critique of imperialism. But in the United States, viewers saw only a sanitized adventure about a cheerful boy reporter. By the end of its short run, Tintin's early series vanished from broadcast schedules and remained buried for decades. Restorations in the 21st century exposed how much of it had been erased. It stands today as a cautionary tale of cultural censorship, where one of Europe's most intelligent comics was stripped of its edge to fit the comfort zone of American television. Number 1. The Beatles cartoon, 1965. When the Beatles cartoon hit television screens, it was expected to be nothing more than harmless musical fun. 4 cheerful caricatures of the world's most famous band running through slapstick adventures and singing their hits. But what most fans don't realize is that this series was one of the most censored and misunderstood cartoons of the entire decade. The show was rushed into production to cash in on Beatlemania. American producers had little contact with the real band. The voices were impersonated by American actors, and the animation was handled overseas with minimal supervision. Yet despite the cheerful tone, censors quickly noticed its sly humor and cultural references. Many early scripts included jokes about war politics and fame that worried network executives. Episodes referencing psychedelic art or counterculture slang were reworked before airing. In one case, a sequence hinting at anti-war sentiment was completely cut. Another episode featuring the song Nowhere Man was delayed for months due to fears it carried a political message. Religious groups protested scenes that depicted the Beatles in foreign temples or dreamlike sequences inspired by Eastern imagery. Even the band members themselves were embarrassed by how they were portrayed. John Lennon later called it rubbish, but admitted that it captured the growing absurdity of fame better than expected. Behind the scenes, the chaos was enormous. Animators were told to churn out episodes at breakneck speed, while sponsors demanded that the show remain squeaky clean. By 1967, several episodes had been re-edited or shelved entirely as the real Beatles moved toward a darker, experimental image that no longer fit the sanitized cartoon. The legacy is strange, yet profound. Long dismissed as lightweight entertainment, the Beatles cartoon actually mirrors the decade's transformation, from innocence to rebellion, from laughter to censorship. Its uncut reels reveal humor and surrealism far ahead of their time. It was the 60s in miniature, bright, colorful, and constantly silenced. So much of 60s animation was erased, redrawn, or softened for our protection. Yet, behind those smiling faces, the artists were fighting their own battles for creativity and truth. How many more lost episodes still sit locked in archives, waiting to be rediscovered? If you love uncovering forgotten media mysteries like this, share and subscribe to join the search.